this is the gate of Adonai, enter into it, you who have fed the hungry. And then I think perhaps maybe this might even be way more well-known from the Passover Haggadah. This is the bread of affliction our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are in need come share our Passover. So this issue is central to our Jewish values, and so we're very proud to present this program and hope that it will help educate more people about this issue and inspire many of you to take action. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Julie Meir, who is the Executive Director of the Community Chest of Port Washington. She's been in that role for 10 years. Somebody's not muted. And in March of 2020, the Community Chest, in reaction to the COVID-19 pandemic, formed the Port Washington COVID-19 Community Response Working Group and a GoFundMe Response Fund. The working group, which includes representatives from the town, the school district, the public library, the police, the Port Washington Crisis Relief Team, the Clergy Association, and community and faith-based charitable organizations, meets regularly to address and respond to the emergency needs of Port Washington residents as a result of the pandemic. The Response Fund, which expands the local capacity of outreach organizations, is being used to make emergency grants for food needs, housing costs, and other expenses. And in her role as the executive director, Julie directs those efforts. Julie's lived in Port for over 20 years and has held many leadership positions in the community. She is currently the co-president of the local chapter of the League of Women Voters, of which I am also a member and very proud. There are just so many individuals and organizations in our community doing amazing work, and I know that many of them have joined our panel, but it will just take up too much time to name you all. So please know that we thank you for all the work that you do. And I just want to recognize our newly elected state senator, Anna Kaplan, and our newly elected assembly person, Gina Saletti. And I hope that this program provides you with insight into this pressing need in our community. So please take it away, Julie.
Thank you. Before we begin, as Allison said, I want everyone to know that there will be follow-up information posted at the end. This is the email address. It's also in the chat. So if you send an email to Janet Lavin, you will absolutely be sent the contact information and next steps that we will show at the end of the Zoom call, the Zoom forum. Additionally, if you have questions during the evening, know that the chat is being monitored by the organizers and we're leaving time at the end for Q&A. I'd like to introduce our panelists for this evening. Sister Kathy Somerville is the director of the parish social ministry at Our Lady of Fatima, located in Port Washington. She has a master's degree in social work and a certificate in pastoral counseling. A former teacher, Sister Kathy has been doing direct service work to the families who live in the Manor Haven area for close to 40 years. Outreach programs at Our Lady of Fatima include English as a second language, school supplies, Thanksgiving and Christmas giving programs, non-food donations, advocacy, limited financial assistance, and of course, the food pantry. Sister Kathy, just give a wave so everyone knows who you are. Lourdes Tagliatella is the director of the parish social ministry at St. Peter of Alcantara in Port Washington, a job she has held for 10 years. She has served on the Catholic Charities USA Parish Social Ministry Leadership Team for 6 years. The St. Peter's Social Ministry provides families in need with food, clothing, basic needs, and in some cases, financial assistance. They have a Thanksgiving basket and Christmas angel program and provide and referrals for immigration matters, housing, and other case management services. Lourdes, would you give a wave so people know who you are? Cheryl Albanese has lived in Port Washington with her family for almost 20 years. She has learned about food insecurity in the Port community from her activities with the Port schools, and also by starting the Blessings in a Backpack program in Port Washington, which provides food to about 60 preschoolers each week over the weekends when they do not receive meals at school. Most recently, she joined the board of Community Chest and is helping with the Port Washington COVID-19 Community Response Food Insecurity Initiative. Cheryl, give a wave. Jacob Dixon serves as Education Director at Lytic House Community Center, a nonprofit dedicated to enhancing the quality of life of youth, adults, and seniors in Port Washington. Jacob supports all academic services and community education programs, including Lytic House's Food Justice and Basic Needs Pantry. A community organizer and adjunct professor at Bank Street College of Education, Jacob is currently pursuing his doctoral studies and was selected as a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Culture of Health Leader in 2019, with a focus on the impact of food deserts and food insecurity on Long Island for seniors and children under the age of 5. Jacob, give a wave. Taisha Freeman is the SNAP and Community Resource Supervisor at Island Harvest. SNAP is the federally funded program formerly known as food stamps. Island Harvest is Long Island's largest hunger relief organization, supporting over 300,000 Long Islanders in need with their network of soup kitchens, food pantries, and other emergency programs. Taisha is with us tonight, but she is not on video. We are going to start this evening with Taisha, who will help us understand the basic concept of food insecurity and give us a sense of how the pandemic has affected vulnerable populations in Nassau County. Taisha? You want to start your screen? Taisha, are you going to have audio? Well, until Taisha joins us, I'm just going to read to you guys some of the descriptions that are on Taisha's PowerPoint presentation. The definition of food insecurity is access to quality, nutritious food due to lack of money and other resources. As you can see from her first slide, living on Long Island, 1 in 10 people are food insecure, and there are 90,000 students receiving free and reduced lunch in our districts. There's a very high cost of living with high property taxes, large pockets of poverty. We have 124 school districts with limited public transportation. If Taisha can join, she should feel free to take over.
Okay.
The main causes for food insecurity are under or unemployment, poverty, and inconsistent access to enough food. And the number of people in Nassau County who are food insecure has changed drastically since the pandemic. I don't know if we have access to her final slide, but clients screened in Nassau County before COVID were 600, And the same 8-month period during COVID, 9,900. SNAP applications submitted were 464 last year and close to 2,000 applications this year. So I know that when Taisha joins audio, she will be able to comment on this. And I had hoped that she could have a little bit of additional background for us, but in the interim, it would seem that the definition of food insecurity would be a good jumping off point to ask our panelists about the changes in the number of families that they are serving, the frequency they are serving them, and any shifts in demographics that they see. So I'd like to start with Sister Kathy and then move to Lourdes, Jacob, and if Taisha can join us, then Taisha. So Sister Kathy, would you please talk about the changes in the number of families you're serving now compared to pre-COVID and the frequency that you see them and any shift in demographics?
Okay. I would say this time last year, we had 92 families. At the beginning or at the high point of the pandemic, we probably had about 145 families that were coming. Since that time, we have kind of gone down to 125 families. So we still have a 35 or 40 family increase. We used to have the families come once every 2 weeks, but since COVID, many of them come once every week now. I don't know that there's much of a shift in demographics, but I will say that we have 1 or 2 families now that would not have been your typical food pantry recipients and are not your typical food pantry recipients.
Lourdes, do you want to comment next?
I'm sorry, I was muted, wasn't I?
Now
Yes.
you're
Okay. We're pretty much started off about the same way that Sister Kathy did. I believe we started off last year, just before COVID hit, at about 79 families. And right as COVID started to hit its peak, we were up to about, if I'm not mistaken, about 130 families. It was growing exponentially. And now it's sort of tapered off. I'm down to about 109 families. We did increase our number. We also were twice a month. Not specifically every 2 weeks, but twice a month. And then we were up to 3 times a month. And we've pretty much stayed at that. We thought about going back down to twice a month because it's sort of tapered off. But I'm seeing it sort of starting to pick back up again. And I think it's probably because as the day laboring jobs are starting to wind down, the need is starting to come back up again. But as far as demographics, during COVID, I did see, I would say about maybe 5 or 6 families that normally I would not have crossed my door. They didn't stay for very long, although one did. I do have 1 or 2 families that have stayed with me that aren't the, if you want to call them, I hate saying this, but like the atypical of what normally comes to my pantry, or the demographic of what normally comes to the pantry. But outside of that, the demographics have stayed pretty stable as far as, age groups and, whether they're white, Caucasian, Black, Hispanic, or so forth. My numbers have stayed pretty steady.
okay. Jacob, do you want to comment at Lytic House?
Sure, Julie. And good evening, everybody. In regards to our increase, prior to the pandemic, we had 85 families. We have been close to double now with 165. that we service. We went from twice a month and providing our food, justice, and basic needs pantry to now doing it twice a week. And we have done so within the last 12 weeks, given the increase that we've had. And in addition to who we serve, as far as changing demographics, we've actually seen people of all walks of life walking through our doors. Although we have a service population that is predominantly African American and or Latino, as they identify themselves of, we've just seen that as food, clothing, and shelter, the basic foundations have rocked the bottom of most of our families, that all people are coming through our doors. And we just want to make sure that we continue to extend our doors open, just as well as I know Lourdes and Sister Kathy has expressed.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. Taisha, are you on now? Okay, so when we think of food pantries, we typically think of shelf-stable products, but of course, produce, meat, and dairy are also part of the complete package. I'd like to ask the pantry directors to answer the question of how you actually acquire the food that's distributed to families in need. And in your answer, please speak to both shelf-stable and non-shelf-stable food. And I'd like to start with Jacob this time.
Sure. So we actually have a 20-year partnership with Island Harvest. And so they have been a great anchor in allowing us to help with our pantry. But then the other parts of our donation have been coming from great people like you all. I know it's Community Chest is tagline of the people of Port, helping the people of Port. That's what we do each and every day and how we strive. It's how we're able to gather the donations, and specifically, we've gotten a lot more of non-perishable items. There seems to be more of an easier donation acts for folks. And often we are able to purchase within grants and other funded programs and efforts to purchase the perishable items, because those more at the high cost. But nevertheless, we try our best to give healthy shelves items, but we've seen more of the non-perishable than the perishable shelves that we've been able to provide.
So just a follow-up, Jacob, how do you keep your non-shelf stable food fresh?
So we actually have 2 deep freezers and a refrigerator. We check temperature checks. We follow all of the guidelines that we would to make sure that it's there. And we immediately donate, provide the food afterwards. So we have a text messaging system, we have an online appointment system, and it's done within a 2-day period. We don't extend it anything longer than that, just because we want to make sure that people are able to use it that day of, and we actively encourage that, so that way the meat or any other poultry or items don't get, rampant or, expired in any way, shape, or form.
Sister Kathy, can you answer that same question? How do you get the food that's distributed to families in need, and both speak to shelf stable and non-shelf stable?
Okay. Prior to COVID, we only pretty much did shelf-stable food. On occasion, somebody would give us a lasagna or something that they made, but it was pretty much shelf-stable food, except in the summers. During the summers, probably for the past 10 years, Plant a Row has been coming and providing fresh fruit and vegetables. Well, not fruit, but vegetables. Since COVID, because of Community Chest and our involvement with them, we've been involved with Island Harvest. So we do get other than shelf-stable food. And the food that we get, the shelf-stable food, pretty much comes from donations. We have bins outside, well, since COVID, 7 days a week, we have bins outside to keep replenishing the pantry. We have also received monetary donations. So when we run out of food, we put an order into Goya. Since COVID, again, we did not do this before, but we get milk and eggs. In the beginning, we purchased the milk and eggs. Then there was a donation given to the Methodist Church, and they provided the milk and eggs. And now we are going back to paying for the milk and eggs from the money that we were given for COVID.
And would you say that, that situation is working in that you find your pantry shelves full when they need to be full?
That I don't know that they're ever really full, but because, or if they are, then the food goes out again. So it's a constant rhythm of needing to be replenished. We have what we need, yes. And if we don't, then we buy it.
Okay. Thank Lourdes, do you want to also answer this question about acquisition of food, how you get the food that's distributed? And also, please mention shelf-stable and not shelf-stable food.
Yes, we are member agencies of both Island Harvest as well as Long Island Cares. So we have grants through them. So we do acquire food through both of those agencies. We also have a very generous parish. So in the bulletin, I always put in every week for the shelf-stable stuff. Although one time somebody did put in a shelf stable stuff and it was not a pretty picture at the back of the church. Anyway, moving forward, but we do get from the community a lot, especially during this COVID, the outpouring from community chests, from people such as Julie Epstein, Julie Cozen, I'm sorry, from the JCC has been nothing short of a miracle. The outpouring from the community in general, and from our parish too. I mean, everybody has really stepped up. As Sister Kathy says, there's a constant ebb and flow. And we have gotten also a huge amount of monetary donations from our parishioners and from the community at large, and even from outside the community. And we've used that to purchase. We also have a group that, an organization that we use called Our Harvest. And people order directly from them online. And then what they normally do is they give us a percentage back in meat, which Sister Kathy and I would split all the time. But I guess since COVID, everything has sort of slacked off. So I purchase meat directly from him. He gives me a discount. So, we had a parishioner once that gave me a full month of deli meat. Every week I got deli meat and cheese delivered. We also have a dairy program that we've continued, even though it stopped. Fortunately, we have the funds now to purchase that. We've never had that before. And our families are loving it. So we do get that. And being member agencies of Long Island Cares and Island Harvest are very helpful, that's it.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit about, you mentioned the JCC. Can you explain a little bit about how that works? And is that a new method?
That's a new method, which Gail Seiden introduced us to. Hi, Gail. I had a visit from her today. I don't know if Susan Berman is on here, but if you are, thank you so much. The last delivery we got just before Thanksgiving was a godsend. But if I'm not mistaken, I think the JCC works with Island Harvest. And they're becoming sort of like a little mini food bank for our little corner of the world here. And Gail usually asks us what we need. And I think Sister Kathy and I have pretty much provided like a general list of the stuff that we generally use. And Gail will usually text us and say, same stuff. And we usually text her back and say, yeah. And she says, this day and this day, or which day this week works. And we say, yeah, that works. And then the Navigators, which is a group of special needs adults, they go, and if I'm not mistaken, they go and they pick up.
Yep, that's right.
Yes. Hey, how are you?
Hi, Lourdes.
Hi. And they get so excited. They come and they're so excited to bring the food over, and they drop the food off. And It's been, I mean, it's been working out great. Sometimes, sometimes it's huge amounts, sometimes it's not, but you know what? Every little bit counts, and
Thank you.
it's been working out great. It's been a real blessing. It really
Thank
has.
you. I'd like to bring Cheryl in now. Cheryl, I'd like you to speak to how our pantries have access to Long Island Harvest and other ways that food is provided for families in need. Specifically, I'd like you to talk about the Blessings in a Backpack, the Union Free School District Lunch Program, and the donations from Plant a Row, if you could.
Sure. That was hi, everyone. I'm trying to figure out where to start with that. Maybe I'll start with blessings. My partner, Val Taylor, who's on here somewhere, hi, Val, and I have sort of been a partner in all of anything I've done with food insecurity. And about 7 years ago, we brought Blessings in a Backpack to Port Washington. Through that, we feed about 60 preschoolers. They take food home every weekend. One that I learned, I don't know everybody who's speaking tonight, but I've met some of you, and the outreach from the community in general is always just amazing, and that's one of the biggest things that I found. So even Sister Kathy did awareness and fundraising for Blessings pre-COVID, and so that program provides food to 60 preschoolers over the weekends, because normally they receive meals at school during the week and they don't have access to those meals, which I guess brings us to the meals at school. So I think I don't know if the count has gone up. It probably has. I was checking with Val before. I think the last count we had was about 1,100 students in Port Washington qualify for the free lunch program. And I know that through COVID, obviously the schools were not open, but it was very important that those meals still be delivered. And I know through volunteerism and through this, the parent council and other organizations, that those meals were delivered to a couple of locations in town, including some of the pantries, and that the families still had access to those meals on the days when the kids are not in school. And now I believe that most of those kids are in school every day, even though it's the every other day system. But I have to say that on the days when the school is now closed due to COVID, I'm not sure what's happening on those days. I forgot that, that was sort of a glitch in our system. So I don't know if anyone is on here who knows more about that piece. But so those children are, receiving, we're receiving food all throughout COVID. I'm sorry, I'm now forgetting what else you asked me to address. The food.
Plant a Row.
So Plant a Row, right? I think somebody had addressed, right? Lourdes had addressed. I think it's about a 10-year organization now. I think some people see the pots around town. The beautifully painted pots by the Schreiber students. I think mostly, but and that food's delivered to the pantries weekly, so that they have. I think Our Lady Fatima leaves it outside so people can pick, and I'm not sure how each pantry works it, but they have access to that great supply of produce.
So my understanding, because Marv is one of the grantees of the community chest, is that the pots are really a marketing tool for the encouragement of backyard gardeners to grow excess produce. And then they bring that to Bayless Garden Center, who stores it, who then brings it to the pantries. And I know that there have been tons and tons. And when I say tons, that's not an expression. I mean literal tons of food delivered, fresh food delivered to the pantries over the course of Plant a Row in Port Washington. So we know that that's working very well, certainly in the summertime. Okay, I'd like to back up a little bit from this and talk about a broader question of whether or not we think that the food insecurity we have here in Port Washington is a chronic or transitory system. In other words, do we think that COVID has made food insecurity an issue, or was food insecurity an issue before? Lourdes, could you comment on that?
I think food insecurity was an issue long before COVID. And I think that there's a root cause to food insecurity. I think there's other things here because I think that unfortunately families have to choose between electricity and food, or they have, or the biggest thing is they have to choose between paying rent or food. I think part of the bigger problem here is the exorbitant cost of housing. In general, all over the place, but specifically on Long Island. I think the cost of housing is exorbitant, and I think a lot of families have to choose. And I think it's a very sad state of affairs where you have to choose between paying for a roof over your heads or paying to feed your family.
Yes.
And I think until we fix that problem, you're always going to have to worry about filling up the shelves in a food pantry.
Right.
So I think it's a chronic problem. And
Jacob? Yeah, I'd like to hear from Jacob and Sister Kathy on that.
Yep.
I completely agree. I do believe it is a chronic issue well before the pandemic. I agree. Not only is it about affordability in terms of housing and making tough life decisions of whether or not it's, your rent or food that you put on the table, but it's also about affordability of food costs itself. That's also another issue that we don't often address. Most of our families actually want to have healthy options, but may not be able to afford it given their income and where they need to go. And so one of the things that we try to do at our pantry, for instance, is that we worked with some of our farmers market partners that we have in other communities and bringing farm to the table and actually bringing fresh produce, whether it's collard greens or whether it's lettuce and actual tomatoes that actually came from out east to Port Washington for families as part of our pantry, because we know that otherwise it may not be as affordable to get it at a local supermarket. We had Plant a Row, the actual pot in front of our Lytic house, and we had our kids as part of our youth council be able to put it together. So it's trying to create access to those options that I feel like it's part of the issue that we definitely need to address overall. But I do believe it is a chronic issue that's across the board.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we can say that the needs of families are greater than ever before. The loss of wages from job loss or reduced hours creates significant challenges for families that we've heard and we know. Some workers are not eligible for unemployment insurance. Sister Kathy, can you address the specific challenges that most of your families are facing and why they are particularly at risk?
Sure. I think for all of the reasons that I probably all share the same reasons. Our families have lower paying jobs, seasonal work. Many of them have lost their jobs because of COVID. Some of them are not eligible for food stamps. Many or most of our people are undocumented. They can go if their children are born here, but some of them are afraid to go to social service because of their status. So many of them live in rooms because that's all they can afford. And that's always a problem because especially in Matter Haven, it's illegal to rent rooms. So
I really appreciate your honesty, Sister Kathy. I know this is an issue that we talk about a lot in our working group. And we have not found great solutions, certainly to the rent situation. What percentage would you say of your families that you're serving are undocumented at this point?
well, I would say 98% of our families are Hispanic, and 50% or better are undocumented.
Okay. Jacob, did you want to comment on this particular situation? I'm not sure what the demographics are at Lytic House. Eligibility for unemployment insurance, et cetera.
Absolutely. So we at Lytic House, we've seen a shift in our demographics to where we're close to now 50-50 in African American or Hispanic or Latino. And as part of that, we've seen we've worked really hard through our programs and services to work towards financial stability, whether it is rent or mortgage assistance, whether it's dealing with utilities, whether it's dealing with heating and cooling assistance with our partners with United Way, with Project Warmth, to help do oil deliveries or other things depending upon the situation. And what we've noticed is a lot of our families are just at the income bracket where they're not eligible, but still can't afford to be able to meet the basic needs. And so when we're often at that cusp, particularly within the families who have two jobs to make ends meet, it becomes increasingly difficult to meet the basic needs that they need in their household. And so we do have close to a third of our population who have yet to have a status of that. And as a result, it's has been increasingly difficult, but we don't utilize that in our programs as an eligibility requirement, just knowing how to be more culturally responsive to our neighborhood. But we do know in terms of other services that may require that status, it is a lot more difficult to navigate through.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that through all of your partnerships and all of the relationships that you guys have developed and that Lynette has developed over the years, that provides a lot of avenues for resources for your families.
Absolutely, especially given the fact that, at the end of the day, our goal is to make sure that they have a sense of agency and they find their voice in the process and still able to advocate for their needs. We've had a lot of families who have organized on different issues related to educational issues, whether it's dealing with health, whether it's dealing with community unification. So there's all different areas that we've seen these families come together saying that how can we still be a part of Port Washington and not feel separate. And I think that's very important, especially given the fact of, how we all strive each and every day towards inclusion in our community more and more.
So that sort of brings me to a question of, so say a family is without adequate income. They have to make decisions. They don't know how to purchase food. How would they seek assistance? Where would they go? What's the mechanism? How do they know who to call? And sort of in that case, do the pantries work together? Jacob, you want to start us off?
Sure, Julie. So most of our families who have done before have outreach to our telephone number and have called us. And depending upon the person who picks up, we are able to get them straight over to a quick online registration process. We've gone 100% virtual in that process. That form is available both in English and in Spanish. As soon as they go ahead and complete that reentry, they don't have to complete the pantry application again, and they automatically can schedule an appointment. We do take emergency cases based upon the need, and we'll see them immediately if we need to do so, just because of the volume, as well as maintaining social distancing. And so through that, once you're able to have that link every Wednesday or Friday, that same link is stationary. We update the appointments on our end, so the next time they might need it, they can go back in to be able to utilize it. So that way they know it's a sense of frequency and it's not creating any more additional work that might be required on their end. And if there are times at which we do need to outreach to our partners here in order to do that, whether it's for basic needs resources, we reach out. So we do believe in the collaboration piece, but we also want to make sure that folks don't feel like they're having to constantly feel vulnerable going to different places and also not do duplicative work if they have gone to one place or another, making sure that we also have availability of resources for all the families.
So Lourdes, let's use you as an example. Someone calls you, but how would they know to call you? How would they know that there are places in Port Washington that provide food?
Well, believe it or not, Department of Social Services has us all listed. They have all of our food pantries listed because they get the list, I guess. If they call Catholic Charities will ask them for their address, and then they will refer them to wherever they are supposed to be based on their geographical location and based on our parish geographical boundaries. They get the list from Department of Social Services. They get, sometimes I'll get phone calls from the hospitals. They have those resources available to them, and we are on a list. And sometimes the folks will just get a list, and I'll get a phone call from somebody all the way over in Hempstead You know, can I come to your food? I go, well, where do you live? And so what I try to do is I try to navigate them and try to help them so they can go someplace closer to them. And I will sit there and I'll go through my Catholic Charities book and try to find someplace that's closer to them. And I'll try to help them that way. If somebody shows up at my door without calling first, of course, I'm going to give them emergency food. And then I'll try to find out a little bit more and then guide them to where they should go, which makes it just more convenient for them rather than them schlepping all the way from, you know, Farmingdale or wherever it is and then coming all the way to me.
Right.
But
This-
they do obtain that information from Department of Social Services.
Okay, thank you. Sister Kathy, can you tell us a little bit about your screening, how you go about that?
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I forgot. Anyone who comes here comes for an interview. During COVID, we have done some Zoom interviews. We do some in-person interviews now. They also have to fill out a financial form. They have to tell us who lives in their house, name, age, what schools they go to. Every year, they fill out an application if they need assistance for the next year. They need to provide us with all their bills, proof of income, proof of residence.
And has that changed during COVID?
Well, it's changed in the sense of if we do a Zoom interview, we are getting back to one-on-one interviews now. But everybody's still, in the beginning of COVID, we did not interview everybody. If they came for food, they just gave us their name, address, and phone number. And then as time went on, we caught up and interviewed everyone.
Okay. And in terms of your screening process, I know that you do something slightly different for rent assistance. And I know that tonight's session is mostly about food insecurity, but just speak just for a moment about the interviews and the screening you've done for your housing.
Okay. Because we're working with Community Chest, we work together with them on a plan. And in March, we sent letters out to our families asking them who needed rental assistance. We had a day in March where we had about 40 families come. We had a bunch of people here doing interviews scattered all over. There was temperature check for everybody. And we sat down with everybody and went through a set of questions, asking them about their rent. If they worked, when they worked before COVID, when they worked during COVID, what their salary was, how many days they were working. And then everybody had to give us a letter from their landlord verifying that the landlord was the landlord and the tenant was the tenant and how much rent they owed.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kathy. So I think that we'd like to get to some Q&A from the audience, and I have some questions to ask. But before I do, I'd like to do two things. One, I'd like to say from all of us how incredibly grateful we are to you guys for doing the work, not just now during COVID, when in fact things are so difficult and we're all stressed and there's so much anxiety, and yet you, the directors of the community and faith-based organizations who have these food pantries, are seeing this pain firsthand, and you are up at the crack of dawn working often 7 days a week. So from all of us to all of you, thank you so much. I'd like to ask one final question before we do the public comments and questions, which is, and I'd like each of you to make a comment. If you could make one request to our very generous Port Washington community members, what would that one request be? Cheryl, can you take that one first?
I guess my request would be to become active. There's a list of things at the end of this, and a lot of things that you've heard tonight from these wonderful, panelists. And there's a list of things if you want to go and actually do something, like deliver grocery, pick up from Long Island Harvest and deliver to the pantries, to items you can purchase, to gift cards and monetary donations that are needed. So just become aware and become active.
Thank you. That's a great, great comment. Lourdes, if you could make one request to our very generous Port Washington community members, what would that be?
I mean, I have to say, I have to echo what Cheryl said. I mean, and it's a cliche, but it's a saying that a lot of people have heard before, and it's be the change you want to see in the world.
That's
Be the
lovely.
change.
Jacob, your turn.
I think I would ask that to find out how you can help, because everyone has a role, whether it is volunteering to deliver the food to a senior that may not be able to make it to our pantry, or recognizing that we're not just about food, but we're about basic needs. So if you're able to get that well-known toilet paper that's always missing in the supermarket, or the paper towels that are there, the hygiene products, the things that are on their gift cards, if you're able to do it. We've seen folks who have done group events and donate. I think everyone has a role in this process to contribute. It doesn't always have to be monetary or the actual items itself. It could be just by simply just handing it to someone that couldn't otherwise make it. And so don't be afraid to ask or just say what you can and cannot do to make sure that you all fit in and play a part.
Thank you, Jake. That's great. And Sister Kathy, you want to close this out?
I think I would ask people to spread the word, because you're thanking us for what we do. But the reality is, for me, and I think for all of us, we could not do what we do if it wasn't from the donations of other people. I know for us, that's definitely true. The support of the community here, the temples, the churches, especially the temples. I wouldn't be able to do what I do. So while you're thanking us, we know we need to thank the community as well. So if everybody spread the word and everybody did their part, we'd be doing great.
Okay, thank you. Lourdes, I know you asked to say one more thing, so make it quick.
I just want to say we can't forget the work that Pastor Charlie is doing with his paper pantry over at the Lutheran Church, and also, correct me if I'm wrong, the Port Pantry Support Squad. Or
Close. Supply squad. Yes.
So thank you to both those groups. They're doing amazing work, and it's important stuff. So thank you.
So I'm going to start some questions that have been forwarded to me. I don't have necessarily names of people who asked them. Someone asked, where's Liddick House? I can answer that one. That's on Port Washington Boulevard. It's on the corner of Port Washington Boulevard and Harbor Road. It's actually off Harbor Road. Harbor Homes is on that corner. Someone asked, do any of you have any relationships with Whole Foods? Has anyone developed a relationship because they might be interested in making cash or donations of food? So I'll just open that up to any of my panelists.
Gail Seiden actually, I don't know if she's still on the call.
I was just
Gail
gonna
Seiden
say.
has reached out. Are you here, Gail? You can speak for yourself. Okay, Gail's not here.
Hi,
so-
yes, I'm here. I'm here.
She is.
Oh, there she is. Okay.
Yeah, no, we just have an opportunity now that somebody gave up their spot, that we may be able to get food from Whole Foods. So Susan Bishop, who's been excellent with the volunteers, she is going this Friday and going to see if we can actually get on the roster that we get food every week, which would be a huge win because they have bread and cheeses and meats and produce. It would be a big win. The other thing is it's on a Friday, which may be an issue because we have to just figure that situation out. But it's a great opportunity if we can get in. So we're hoping. So thank you, Hillary.
So if we can get it, then that would be a great opportunity for one of our volunteer groups to make that trek to Whole Foods and make sure to get it back. And I see your point that it's difficult on Friday, and for the people out there to understand, our pantries generally give food from Monday to Thursday. And I think I'm right, and not necessarily on Friday. So getting food on Friday, if it's fresh food, may be difficult.
We're
Right.
open on Fridays.
Okay.
We've adjusted our schedule to meet them. So we're wanted to we had to change it. We were originally on that Monday to Thursday, but Lynette made a decision to put it on Friday. So just in case anything that needs to go with it.
Okay.
May
So-
I ask a question, please? I'm sorry, but I'm having a little computer problem. This is my first meeting, and I'm extremely impressed. You people are doing a beautiful job. I'd like to become more involved. I do have a question, though. Has anybody who's affiliated with clergy or whatever, do your people know that you exist, and how many people in Port, how many students, et cetera, you know, the numbers that you called off earlier, are in need of food? Because in all honesty, I was very, very surprised. I live in Manor Haven. It's as you know, a fairly mixed community, but I'm really surprised. I've never heard of this because I'm a former head of health and safety for Red Cross of Manhattan, of New York, and I think if people became aware of what these figures were, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them would be really shocked.
So I can say that I can't necessarily speak to free and reduced lunch in the district, but I know that the number of families, the number of unique families that we're serving through the working group is 400. So we've got 5 organizations that we're working with. 3 are represented here. We have Our Lady of Fatima, St. Peter of Alcantara,
Right.
Lyttic. There's also the Port Washington Community Action Council. Mario Martinez is on this call, though not a panelist. And we also have the Port Washington Parent Resource Center outreach program. So we worked really hard at the beginning of the process to make sure that we were not double counting, that we had unique families, and that is in fact what we're serving. I know that the organizers will post list of contact information after this call, as well as next steps. And I don't know your name, but I'm sure that you'll be able to reach out to someone on this list, and you can find out more information. I know that someone asked if anyone could think of a way that pantries could effectively have a more stable and reliable food supply. So I don't know if Cheryl, Lourdes, Jacob, or Sister Kathy would like to comment on that.
What was the question again?
How can we ensure that the pantries have a more stable and reliable food supply? So considering that you rely on donations regularly coming in and out, how do you make sure that you have a stable supply?
I don't know that there is a real way. The bottom line for us is if we don't get the donations and we don't get the food, then we can't give it. And I think that's probably true for everybody.
But you do order when you need to, right, Sister Kathy?
Yes,
If the funds are there.
right now, we've been blessed with very generous donations from the community. So it's not a problem to order 6 months from now or 7 months from now. If those donations are not there, we might not be able to do that. Like we
Right.
couldn't always order eggs and milk. We couldn't always do a lot of things that we're doing now because of COVID.
Melanie DeRigo asked the question, do our local farmers markets take SNAP benefits? I don't have an answer to that question. I would guess not, but I could be
Yes,
wrong.
they do. I
Oh, they-
actually, yeah, I actually run the Roseville and Hempstead Farmers Market that actually helps support the Lytic House competition of it. And they do take SNAP as well as the Farmers Market Nutrition Program checks that seniors may receive. And so depending upon each farmers market, not all of them do, but I would just ask them if they do, but most likely they would have it because it is a free machine that most of the local farmers markets do have in order to accept it, because that's part of its program is to incentivize more healthy food options.
Jacob, do you have a relationship or does Lynette have a relationship? And for those who don't know, Lynette is the executive director of Lytic House. Do you guys have a relationship with the Port Washington Farmers Market?
Yes, we do.
Okay, that's wonderful. And do you know if they take SNAP benefits?
Julie?
Oh, did Nancy was going in? I'm sorry. I am not 100% sure on the Port Washington one. I do know last year they did, but I need to find out for this year because there were some changes in regards to their model and how they needed to get it done. But I could definitely have that answered for you when we send out the follow-up to the group, so that way that answer is provided.
Okay, thank you so much, Jacob. Carrie Huzar asked, is there anything that the people can do, the Port Washington community, for Thanksgiving? Each of you can certainly take a turn. I know the answer is going to be yes. The question is what?
Well, normally for Thanksgiving, we usually put together a Thanksgiving bundle and then we give each family gift cards so they can go out and buy their own turkey. And then we do meals through Sullivan's Key and Finn McCool's to the homebound and to seniors. And then we get volunteer drivers. At this point, we have everything pretty much in place. And everybody, I would say 90% of our families have already picked up their bundles and their gift cards. Thank you to Community Chest for the gift cards. I mean, usually, some people do food drives for us based on the list of what we put in the bundles. I mean, I don't know. How do you, I mean, do you pretty much do the same thing, right, Sister Kathy?
For us this year, it's been very different because we can't have everybody in our parish center. Traditionally, the Sunday before Thanksgiving, we have much activity going on in our parish center. We have loads of groups coming in, giving food. We sort the food in the morning on different tables. At noon, a bunch of volunteers come help us bag everything. We line all the bags up in the classrooms, 1 to 100. At 1 o'clock, the families would come and pick it up. St. Francis Hospital came to give out flu shots. But this year we can't do any of that. So all of our families are being done through gift cards. And they're getting their gift cards this Sunday.
So make an ask, Sister Kathy. Make an ask. What can they do to help?
Gift cards.
So, you know, I'm going to be honest with you. We have to be ready. We are ready now for Sunday. So you want me to ask for gift cards? You can always give gift cards that will be used during the year. But for Thanksgiving, we're okay.
We're set, yeah.
Okay. All right. Jacob, did you want to answer that question about Thanksgiving? I'm not sure if Lytic House has a Thanksgiving program.
Yes, we do. Actually, this Sunday coming up, we're actually doing our Thanksgiving distribution of turkeys that we've got donated from various members of the community. Some, I believe, are on this call, so we thank you for that, as well as our sides and our fixings of it. Lynette definitely is asking for gift cards. She told me that that question was going to be asked to be able to emphasize that, largely because we, this year, as we will have most of our families come to our center, we're actually having our youth council do social distancing, delivering it across the community, particularly to our seniors. And so it's kind of a curbside takeout model of what we're able to do. And so we will love it if we're able to get anything, especially from local restaurants. That was one of the things that was key. We got donations last time from one of the pizzerias that was on Main Street, and it was an amazing to have the families be able to connect together, walk there, enjoy their opportunity to do that. And so we're able to do more dine-in opportunities within Port Washington that will also be a huge benefit.
Okay, so I'd like to mention one thing that we haven't addressed here, and it is 8:30, so I want to be mindful of time. That I just want to say in terms of caring for our senior population, all of these organizations provide the same service that they have been talking about to families as they do to seniors. Seniors are part of their population, but also we should mention that the town and the community chest, the COVID response team, is always encouraging people to call 311 to get in touch with Project Independence that provides a variety of services for seniors. It assists people in applying for Meals on Wheels, which normally has a very stringent policy in terms of who can apply, but during COVID, they've relaxed it more. So if anyone knows of seniors, make sure and encourage them that they register with Project Independence by calling 311. It is a little cumbersome to use, we understand that, but it is the best way to reach out. I'd like to ask one final question, and that is, are you guys more interested in donations of cash or gift cards or food? So the question is cash/gift cards or food. You can answer with one word, one phrase, or you can say a
Yes.
sentence.
We'll
Yes.
take it anyway.
Okay.
I echo that response.
Same.
Okay. So I do have that we're at 8:37 and we want to respect everyone's time. So I'd like to hand it back to Allison White, I think, who's going to have some closing remarks.
So on behalf of the synagogue and the Social Action Committee, I just want to thank you, Julie, so much for moderating this panel and doing such a fabulous job. And to all of our panelists, thank you as well for being with us this evening and for all of the work that you do. As we said at the beginning, if Janet Lavin already has your email, you don't need to email her. She is going to be sending you the action steps and the contact information for all the panelists. If you have not been in touch with Janet, Julie is holding up her email address, which is jdlavin@aol.com. And you can email her and you will be receiving our very detailed list of action steps and the contact information, which has the addresses and phone numbers, so you can get in touch with all of the participants this evening. And so we just want to thank everybody and wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Allison.
Stay safe. Okay. Great.